What's going on, guys? This is Chris Weidman. I appreciate you guys checking out my channel and the latest episode of my podcast, Won't Back Down. I have a great show planned for today, but before we begin, I want to tell you about my show's presenting sponsor, BioXcellerator. BioXcellerator is the world leader in stem cell therapy and regenerative medical research. Through the use of their powerful golden stem cells, they help patients heal from joint and orthopedic injuries, autoimmune disorders, spine and disc damage, and neurological trauma. I went down to Medellin, Colombia, and I got my stem cells, and honestly, I feel great. My leg is improving every single day, and it takes about 6 months to get full effect from the stem cells, and I'm really excited to see what happens in the future. Thanks again to BioXcellerator for helping sponsor this show and create my show, Won't Back Down, which is also available on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, so my leg is actually all right. You know, it's had some ups and downs. Right now, I felt like I was 100% on the mend and everything was working good, and I was heading in the right direction up until like 2 weeks ago. And I was doing I was on a medicine ball doing one-arm push-ups, and I guess it was a lot of weight on my one leg, and the tendon rolled over the plate is what we think happened. Ooh. And it was like a subluxing feeling with a sharp pain. And now the tendon is just like, it's not torn or anything like that. We got it checked out, but it's just tender and there's inflammation going on. Just doing everything I can to work around it, and I'll be good to go.
Well, nice. Well, knock on wood, knock on something over here. I mean, it sounds like, a little minor setback for hopefully, healing strong. So
exactly. No, I'll be good. I'm coming back. I'm going to definitely surprise some people and on this comeback, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
But for all the people out there that don't know who Jesse Jantzen is, Jesse Jantzen, if I had to pick one person from my high school days that I looked up to, that was, inspiration for me, it was him. He was the first 4-time state champion in New York, and that was at a time when there was only one state champion in New York per state. Now there's 2 state champions per each weight. 6-time county champion, right? Yeah. Which is unheard of. Like all the things that he had done at that point, like we've never seen before. I don't know why he even thought he could do it, but I think you are still to this day the best high school wrestler I've ever seen. Yeah, you are the man. I remember you had, and then I'm just going to keep going on this, which I loved you, but
appreciate that.
You had a haircut where you shaved underneath your hair, right? Like, and it would flop down a little bit.
Oh yeah, the bowl cut. I think there's the bowl cut back in the day.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and I had a copy of that. Yeah. So I'm just trying to make this weird, but yeah, you're the man. And you went out to Harvard. Now you're doing great in business. But I'm super excited to have you on the show. But let's stick with the wrestling. To become a 4-time state champion, to be winning counties in 7th grade. Where did you, since it never even happened before, we had never even had seen that happen, where did you get that confidence from at such an early age?
I don't know if I had the confidence or not. I think it was just, as you progress, and first of all, thanks for all the nice things. I think you're my only fan out there, so I appreciate that. But
this dude's humble as hell. Everyone from New York loves this guy.
I wish that. But yeah, so my dad was my coach, which was kind of interesting. And I just watched the movie King Richard, which, much different than the Williams. I'm not going to compare myself to them because they were legends, but it was kind of interesting to see the dynamic of a parent coach and thinking of how my dad navigated that world at such a young age in a sport that's so emotional, so intense. I mean, as a wrestler and a fighter, you get it. It's like, I bet your parents it's just brutal for them to watch you fight or wrestle. It's like this emotional roller coaster. So, and it's intense as a coach because you have to understand your athlete and kind of know what makes them tick. And then you add the parent element. And my dad, he was just a magician. It was always positive reinforcement. He didn't ask me to do something he wouldn't be willing to do. He trained with me a lot. He knew when to back off. I was at tournaments when we would leave. I had 100 matches in the off season in high school because we did all these freestyle tournaments and all these things. You could wrestle cadet and juniors. And my dad, I remember at one tournament, upstate somewhere, he was like, I think we should leave. Cause I was just burned out, and he just knew when to pull back. So I think the confidence came from work ethic, one, and just hey, I put all this time in, I outworked everyone. I felt I deserved it or earned it. and no one really deserves anything, but I felt I put the hours in that I deserved it. Doing well, having some success at a young age, and then having positivity around me all the time. Even when I lost, my dad was, we can beat that guy. This is what we do. And rather than, at times you got to be hard on athletes and critical, but he did it in a very nuanced way of positivity that just worked for me. I needed that. People that were hard on me, I didn't respond well to that, even though, everyone needs a critique here and there. But so I think it was just work ethic and positivity and having good coaches. So
yeah, it's just crazy how rare it is. I feel like I'm constantly trying to build my mental maturity level, because I feel like the more mentally mature you are, the more success you're going to have. And you had that at such a young age. Like, you kind of understood, the harder I work, less pressure on me, and then you expect to win because you're outworking everybody. Was it your dad that like instilled that in you, like at a super young age, just understanding how to work hard, and when you work hard, you're going to have this confidence about you that you just feel like you shouldn't lose to anybody because nobody is outworking you?
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. I think I watched my dad work 3 jobs, 4 jobs his whole life. So like I would witness the time he put in to provide for his family. And also he would work out with me. Sometimes at a young age, we would lift together, or he'd take me to practice. And so like just by doing, I learned that work ethic. And then I guess that was kind of in my DNA. So I was just like, I wanted to do 2-3 workouts a day. I mean, the concern was almost overtraining. And the beauty of wrestling is, as you know, like, anyone can win if you put the hours in. You could be tall and skinny. I mean, you could be, athletic and strong and short. You could be in between, and you kind of find your niche and you find what works for you. And you exploit that. You can be flexible, strong, anything in between. I mean, look at Ben Askren's a great example of a guy.
I was about to name drop him too.
Yeah, Ben's great. I mean, and I'm close with Ben, and he found, this skill, and he found his technique that no one could beat him. And then he had that confidence, right? I mean, he was the most confident guy in college that I knew, and he was just unbeatable. So I think that's the beauty of wrestling, is like that inner arrogance comes from different places. Sometimes it's the time you've put in. Sometimes it's like laws of attraction, like Conor McGregor, which he just keeps willing it and believing it. And he puts time in, and he's athletic. Like, yeah, it's a combination. It's different for everyone. But for me, it was just hours in, and I just felt I earned it. I deserve this. This is why, I sacrificed this. I didn't go drinking. I didn't do that. Or I, ate well, or, I'm being a good person, whatever it is. Like, I just convinced myself of this positive self-talk that I just couldn't be beat. And as like, a warrior, a fighter, a combat sports athlete, everyone has some iteration of that. You have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go back to like elementary school days, because I'm blown away how good you were at such an early age. Now I got kids, I got a son who's wrestling. Like, my son's in 4th grade. Were you playing other sports, or were you just straight wrestling at that point?
I was doing other sports. I kind of did everything growing up. I stopped in high school. My 2 other sports that I really liked were soccer and baseball. I loved baseball because it was just, you had these moments of great intensity when you're making a play, you're up at the plate, you're a pitcher, whatever it is, but it was communal. It was outside. And as a wrestler, we just live in gyms, and it's just the worst, because you're like inside all day long in these tournaments, and they're like 12 hours sometimes at a young age. And, so I stopped everything probably, like freshman year. It was just so much off-season wrestling, so much training. And I was like, I have a chance at a scholarship, and my academics need to be up, to open the doors to maybe some Ivy League schools and things like that.
How'd you deal with like all the psychological typical issues that a wrestler would deal with, like self-doubt and everything like that, and lack of confidence, especially when you have so much pressure on you? Obviously Jesse Jantzen, huge name in New York, was, if someone had got a takedown on you, everybody in the state would be talking about it, and then eventually in the whole country. How are you dealing with the self-talk heading into matches that you realize at the end of the day, there's a lot of pressure on me here, and I really want to win this?
Yeah, it was a challenge as the years went on, because like there was a record to be beat, and I had my eye on that. Like I wanted to win. Every winner wants to win every time. Like, and especially a wrestler, it's just brutal. So I in the beginning, it was kind of like, if I won counties, I had a shot at, state title in 7th and 8th grade. My best shot was 7th grade. In 8th grade, the kid was just better. But then when I got to my junior and senior year, the goal of breaking that record that stood for a long time of winning a 4th state title was within reach. And I remember my senior year, everyone else is like, he's on paper, he should win this easy, but you still have that anxiety, that, that concern, that worry. So I just stayed in my routine. You try to block it out. You try to just be humble and do the same warm up and the same thing, approach every match differently. But it was a challenge. Anyone who tells you different in any big match, when you walk out to a title fight, you've done it several times and you fought a million times, you've wrestled a lot, those feelings are the exact same. You just get maybe better at coping with them and addressing them. And again, it's that self-talk, it's that preparation, it's just keeping things basic. It's focusing on, what's your first attack or your first move. And then once you're in the fight of the match, obviously it's all a blur. You're just reacting. It's muscle memory. So it's really just handling, getting up into that moment. And then, usually once we all get past that, you feel great.
Yeah. I throughout my career, I feel like almost every single wrestling match I lost on my own. I beat myself a lot of the time, almost every one of them. I never felt like, this guy's just that much better than me. I always felt like the doubt or not working hard enough or whatever it is, I would I just couldn't beat myself. I just couldn't get to the point of, not letting myself, beat myself. Did you have the matches that you lost in high school, which I don't think were many. I looked it up. It was 12 or 13 matches total since 7th grade. Or am I wrong with that?
No, I didn't lose in 9 to 12, but I lost 7th and 8th grade, 3 total. So I lost once in 8th grade and twice in 7th grade.
So 3 times total you lost.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad.
No.
Oh, but maybe it was college.
I think
that
college.
Was your college
I think college I lost more. Yeah, 12
Okay,
times.
yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So the matches that you lost in high school, were any of them self-sabotage or were the guy who was just better than you at that time?
Well, I avenged one loss. What did I lose twice though? Oh, I lost in states and then I lost to a local guy. The one loss was, I think I was better then. I beat him right after that. And I kind of got caught.
Yeah.
And then the other one might've been a little self-sabotage, like a 1-0 match. It was odd. I usually scored points and I was just a weird, funky, I was almost, you get gray or in a haze. And I was like, what's going on right now? It's a close call and a takedown I didn't get. And so those two, they were definitely in reach. Whereas in 8th grade, I think at that point in my career, that guy was a 4-time state finalist as well. He was an animal. So
who was that?
This guy, Brandon Lehman, who is not well known, but he went to a junior college. He would have been a All-American and a threat at a title anywhere he went. I don't know if he had grades or whatever it was, but he was good. I don't know if I wrestled him 10 times. Maybe I win 2 or 3 at that point in my career. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think he was better at that point. Yeah.
It blows me away because I interviewed Askren too, and I asked him a similar question. And out of all of his college losses and also his high school losses, he said he never really beat himself, which is crazy. And I feel like that's very rare in the world of wrestling. I feel like a lot of times the kids, they beat themselves. They kind of self-sabotage and have confidence issues. And really, out of anybody I've ever really talked to, you two are some of the most accomplished wrestlers I've ever talked to, and you didn't really self-sabotage too many times.
There were matches for sure. I'm thinking in college and a few others that I just underperformed, whether that was I screwed up my warm-up or something, or my confidence was shook. But I don't think it was something habitually that happened to me where I was I was so nervous that I blew the match. It happened for sure. There were matches that I probably could have won because I didn't do something right, or I was, I had a mental funk. But there wasn't as many as you'd think. I guess people just beat me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what you want to do, right? You want to eliminate you beating yourself, before you step on that mat, and then if the guy's better than you, he's better than you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens a lot to a lot of athletes, and that's why, I think sports psychology is such a big business. And I don't know if you look at Penn State, but I think they've kind of cracked the code. They seem like they all have a good warm up. They get out there. They're really happy. They're really offensive. They were doing some of these ticks that I think the sports psychologists tell them to do, tap their knees and stuff. So I think that they've spent a lot of time on it. And I think Kale as a coach has done a really good job of making sure he gets the best performance out of their guys. I don't think a lot of their guys underperform. Obviously how good they're doing, but at the same time, I just think they're getting that might be the difference of why they are so good. They have talent, but these guys are really going out and performing their best most of the time. So maybe, yeah.
I agree. I know, like, I feel like Penn State's really changed that a lot. I know they don't wrestle live that much. They're not killing themselves in the room. A lot of it is like flow state type wrestling where it's like hard drilling, but letting the other guy be creative with different types of moves and figuring things out. Not really just sticking to your go-to things, not being afraid to lose a takedown in the room, just flowing out there. And then again, like you can see them for their warm-ups and everything. It's just, they're just going out there and having fun.
Totally. I think that is, it's their training, keeping it light, and like the way they scrap and they wrestle in the room. I think that translates into the matches for sure.
Yeah. Which is very hard to do. It's easy to say, but very hard to do. I remember there was times like for me when I was in junior college and I was trying to get recruited by like Division I, schools. And, I remember like trying to laugh and trying to smile before matches was so hard for me. It was like a freaking nightmare. I was sick to my stomach because I had a lot of expectations on me, and I just didn't know how to deal with it, mentally at that time. And so to see these guys at early in their careers being able to just go out there and be the best version of themselves is it really is awesome to watch. Were you like that? Like in high school, were you just chilling, going into a lot of matches, just having fun?
No, I was pretty serious. There were moments when like some of my better performances when I was able to be a little more casual, but I was pretty intense and pretty serious. There'd be moments when after a match I could relax a little bit, but like you explained, it was similar. It was kind of like, this was business. It wasn't fun. Like you were like out there to do a job. And so, but yeah, I don't know. The Iowa team does really well. And Spencer's more like lighthearted, it seems, Spencer Lee, and he's kind of great. But some of those guys are super intense, but they win and they're winners, and the brands are just animals and they have a different kind of intensity. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just kind of have to find what works for you. But I agree, it'd make the sport a little more fun if we were giggling and laughing and having it going and beating someone's ass.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It was hard for me to separate that. Whereas it seems like the Penn State guys are having a freaking hell of a time.
I think it was also hard because at that time there wasn't that many people to look to as guys like Akale Sanderson, where they're telling their athletes to chill out and have fun and not take it too serious. A lot of the times the main focus for us was some of the Iowa type mentality. So I don't think we really got to see that other side of it, which it 100% works, obviously, the Iowa style. And you get guys like Brent Metcalf who they're going to go out there and they're going to break you. And there's no days that you're sick. There's no days that you're hurt. It's all in your head, and you better just, win, which I had Tom Ryan, who was my coach. So we had that influence on us big time at Hofstra, which, is great, but it's just different.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. I think it was our error as well. And and Tom's great, by the way. I love Tom.
Oh, he's amazing.
He texts me about crypto investments about once every couple of weeks.
Awesome.
But yeah, I just think that was kind of that old school, like work hard, dominate, move on type of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's this, we're seeing a bit of a paradigm shift and like an iteration of how people do this stuff. Staying relaxed in fights actually makes you perform better, it seems, in wrestling matches, fights, which seems counterintuitive, right? Like you're supposed to be angry and mad and go out there and like crush someone.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I feel like the Russians figured that out pretty early on. Like they always seemed way more relaxed than us. We had that mentality where we have to try to break you, and we're uptight and coiled up, and they were way more just chill and relaxed. And the way that we would beat them is just like mentally breaking them and like, physically breaking them. But technically, like I feel like they were way more superior for a long time.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that's kind of what Kale's trying to do. They were also more well-rounded, right? Like the Russian, the way they trained back in the day was kind of like start with soccer, get agility and footwork. Then they'd move on to like gymnastics, and then they would just do technique for a while. And then they would just compete for a while. And then they kind of do that sparring that like Penn State does, which is kind of like drilling, but kind of live, but in between. No one's getting hurt, but like you're constantly in this like flow where you're going chain wrestling the next thing. And, that seems to translate and work in competition.
And I also think they don't really start them. I know there's exceptions, but from like what I've spoke to Vogar about, they don't really start them that early into intense competitions. I don't think like Vogar's sons, I don't think they really wrestled until 7th grade. He would keep them off the mats. They were around it. They knew what wrestling was. They probably understood it on a deep level, but I don't think. Am I wrong? I know
Yeah,
George, I think Vito definitely, I don't think he didn't start competitively until later on. And George definitely, I don't know about Nick.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think they're probably doing cross training and like the gymnastics and the agility, maybe drilling a little bit, but maybe not the intense competition, because I think they avoid the burnout, right? They don't want people to be in America. It's like bigger, better, faster, stronger. And your little kids, like the Pee-wee anything, Pee-wee soccer, Pee-wee football, Pee-wee wrestling is super intense. Yeah. And the parents are super intense. And, I remember losses, not because of pressure from my family or coaches, but because of me, like even at a young age being like, it was my life. It's devastating to lose at like New York State's in like 9 years old. And like, it's not, by the way, but at that point,
the end of the world.
Yeah. But at that point in your life, that is like, that's why you're good, because you think it's everything, but I don't know. That's hard to carry that from that age up until, let's say you're like in your early 30s competing for a world title. That's and maybe the Russians try to avoid that by starting you a little bit later.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the book, but it's like called the 10-year rule. You ever hear that?
Oh, I think
I think they did all these studies. It was psychologists did a bunch of studies on just athletes around the world, and what they realized is that about the 10-year mark of being passionate about something is where you peak, and then you start falling off. Like you can only be passionate for something for up to 10 years. I think is what they figured out.
Okay.
Honestly, obviously, you have that certain passion, and if you get so good, I mean, you could still beat people beneath, that you've, surpassed. But I don't think you're gonna keep improving at the level that you were improving during that 10-year period.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it makes sense. Like the Russians, if you could start later, if you peak ages, if you want to peak at like 20 something years old, you really shouldn't start going until 13, 14 years old if you want to peak around that age.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to check the book out. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, you want to have the infrastructure in place that like you're working on things, you're becoming more athletic. In America, it's different, right? Because the college is such an emphasis. So it's like, he's got to be good at sports because he's got to get into a good college. And if he starts too late, then he won't get recognized and then he misses his opportunity. So I think that pressure is tough, and why maybe there's such this emphasis on starting as quickly as you can and being as successful as you can at a young age. But it probably isn't good for the successes at a pure athlete, separating college, I would think.
And it also could be an issue with like character building and habit building. Like you want to kind of start that at a young age. You want to teach your kid how to work hard and to, learn how to lose and learn how to win at an early age. I feel like that is a great thing to have as you go through life and go through high school and go through, college. And so to take that chance where your kid might start falling into, bad habits, that you can't get out of. You start, you have a developing brain as a kid, and if you start having these habits, you know how hard it is to get over stuff that happened when you were a kid. It's almost impossible for a lot of people. So it is tough. I guess there is no like 100% recipe to do this. You've had look at I love the idea of being able to chill and let your kids just have fun and let them do other sports. But then you look at guys like David Taylor and Dake. These guys have been obsessed with wrestling since an early age, and it paid off for them. But how many other kids are there that kind of were similar experience, but then burned out? It's hard to put like a number. Yeah. There's probably way more of those guys, obviously.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's this a delicate balancing act for sure. And you look at like Kerry Colott, who had a really intense dad and a really intense training, but that guy can handle anything. I mean, he just is a workhorse and an animal. And he was, in my opinion, the greatest high school wrestler probably of all time. Maybe Jimmy Carr, but Kerry Colott was just incredible. But yeah, I think burnout is a real thing. And this takes a really special athlete to be able to handle that workload and that competition. I think David Taylor is one of those guys that kind of always was just cerebral about the sport and wanted to learn and loved being around everything wrestling. And he was really positive. Even if you look at like when he was a little kid, these interviews, he just was always kind of excited and happy about competing. And maybe Dake was that way when he was young too. I don't know.
Yeah, that mental maturity. I feel like there's some exceptional people like you and Dake and Taylor and even Askren and that have that mental maturity at a young age. That's so rare. And you get all these parents that they want their kids to have this, but it's hard to figure it out because you get the books like the 10-year rule, that comes out and you read that, then you look, then you see exceptions like that you and Dake and Taylor and them, and you don't know which way to go. You get dads who push their kids a lot and they actually do make it. And then you get dads who, just aren't even involved, really just are happy for their kid and then they make it. And you get both sides. And as a parent, it's like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I guess you get the feel for the kid and kind of, find a happy medium. But you're right. Like I remember being on vacation and there was a picnic bench. We were like camping out in Long Island. We never really went on real vacations, but my dad took apart the bench and created a bench press out of it. Like there's the 3 panels, right? He took the 2 side ones out. So there's a middle panel. And then I had to pack the weights in the pickup truck. So that's crazy to anyone else. You think about it, but that was like a normal thing, but he made it fun. I didn't even know I was working out.
What age was this?
It's pretty young. I mean, not a teenager.
Gotcha.
So maybe 10 to 12. I mean, I was lifting young. So like, it's just funny. That's crazy, right? Like there's worse stories with Kerry Cole and these people, but like things like that would happen all the time. And I was just like, oh, it's fun. He kind of made it a game where it wasn't like, oh, you got to go lift. Like, otherwise you're going to be a loser. It was more like, hey, I'm going to go work out. You want to do something. I
mean, you are always a strong kid. And I feel like, especially in high school wrestling, being strong is a big part of it, especially being so young. Winning championships in 7th grade against people that were way older and more mature than you. But technically, you obviously were there, but also strength-wise, you were there. Were you big into strength training from like at an early age?
Yeah, I think because the rule in New York is you could wrestle high school when you're in middle school, and maybe that's why my dad said, maybe we should start lifting so you're ready. Technically, he felt maybe I was good enough, and I was going to be big enough for the lightest weight class. But so yeah, I don't know how I feel about it now. Like, I don't feel it caused any damage, but it's tricky, right? You're developing, you don't really want to be going crazy lifting. They say it's not always healthy, but I think you can do now, plyometrics and body weight stuff, some Olympic lifts, if it's controlled and not crazy. I don't regret it. I did. I was lifting at a pretty young age, like real lifts for sure.
And how often and like what were you doing?
Let's see, probably, 9 and 10, at least 3 days a week.
So 9 and 10, were you going to a gym or just at your house?
We had stuff in the garage. So yeah,
but
we had enough.
So you get home from school and then is it right to to lift, or what was that? How'd you figure that out?
Yeah, it was be 3 nights a week after schoolwork, after, usually a wrestling practice or baseball or soccer, depending on the season. And then we just go down and blast some Led Zeppelin and get a lift in. So. And
was your dad not pushing you at this age, like to do that? That was something, or did he have to get on
somehow, he's just like, he was a wizard on convincing you that it was a good idea and it was fun. And it was, at that age, it wasn't like forced, it was kind of like, hey, I'm going to go lift. You should come. Should we go downstairs and lift? And then it got competitive. I'd compete with him like, well, if he's lifting, I got to lift. Even at that age, he almost made it like, not like he was beating me to compete, but he made it like a fun game almost.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I don't know if I would do it the same way. Not that I am scarred from it, but he just found a way to make it more fun versus like some of the dads are like, you got to go downstairs and lift. And him doing it with me helps too. You have a fat, out of shape dad who's like, you got to go get your lift in. He's like eating nachos and watching you. Makes it hard. It probably makes it harder.
That is true.
And my dad would, he never asked me to do something he wouldn't do. And I thought he kind of convinced me it was going to make, me win. I wanted to win so bad, So it was that too.
Yeah. All right, so for all you dads out there, just make sure you do it with the kids, and then they'll do it with you every time. Were you not into like video games when you were a kid?
I did. Yeah, I played Nintendo all the time.
And it was your dad not like that? Wasn't keeping you off of like your workouts? That never became an issue.
No, I don't know. I found time for a little bit of everything, kind of being well-rounded somewhat, But yeah, I played video games with my friends, and one of my great friends is a guy named Mike Torriero, who Long Island guy. And
yep, he beat me too. He lat dropped me in the Longwood freestyle tournament.
Oh, is that right? I'm gonna have to tell him. He'll love that story.
Yeah, I think he knows. He knows.
Yeah, I'm sure he's cherishing that video. He's probably leaking it all over.
It was definitely a good one.
But anyway, so we kind of like all trained together. We had a little group, and since we were real young, 6, 7 years old. And then, but we'd have a lot of fun too. So like I said, like that's the difference, right? If all you're doing is training and it's relentless and there's no hobbies or outlets or fun, then it's real brutal. So, but you can train hard as long as you have some of those breaks. And we definitely did. We had those breaks.
You guys had some crew out in Suffolk County, like when you were in high school with Patchovich, you had Ryan Maurer, Torriero. Who else am I missing? That was like studs.
Yeah, the Morbillo family were really good. Who else was good? I mean, William Floyd had a bunch of good guys.
Were you wrestling Maurer and Massa was in Nassau? Yeah. Were you guys all getting together and wrestling?
We were, yeah. Maurer and that team, they had a bunch of guys in the team that were pretty good at William Floyd, and that was kind of close to where I grew up, Shoreham and William Floyd. So we would train for sure during the year and definitely in the off season. We would train a bit. So. And
any dudes that like gave you a hard time in the room in high school that you have to come out and tell the world right now?
I'm trying to think.
I'm trying to think. Let me try to be as real as possible.
I mean, I lost matches
at the same time.
No, I lost matches, but like, yeah, I mean, Mike was a great training partner. Mike's a 2-time state champ, and we traveled together, and he was literally, my best friend and best training partner. So Mike would challenge me, and we pushed each other a lot. But yeah, there's a host of other guys. I mean, our team was always strong. My cousin wrestled for us. He was good. And then, like the Mowers and those guys were always talented as well. I mean,
what age did you start going to actually wrestle like college kids?
I was cheating a bit and breaking the rules back in the day. I would go.
yeah. It's all good.
They can't get me now.
It's
no,
all right. Not past 7 years. You're good.
No, not necessarily. I would just do like the open practices, but pretty young, as young as 8th or 9th grade.
Are you kidding me? Wrestling live with the guys in college?
Yeah, I remember doing trips to Maryland to wrestle with the Maryland guys with my mentors. Kind of the reason I went to Harvard, this guy, Andy McNerney, who was like an uncle or second dad. He was just an amazing guy and All-American for Harvard. But at the time, he lived in D.C. and he had trained at Maryland. And I was probably, in middle school at the time. And we would go train with him. And then there would be like the 125-pounder for Maryland and stuff and some high school kids that were really good that would train with us. So.
I mean, were you at the point in 8th grade where you were getting takedowns on the 125-pound guy from Maryland? Was it actually competitive at that point?
Probably not. No, I don't think. Probably not. I don't remember. I mean, it was high school kids too. It's hard to remember which guys I was with. I was shocking to the point where they were like, like what's going on here? Yeah. But definitely in high school, I was making it very competitive with college guys.
Junior, senior year.
Certainly junior, senior year. Maybe a little younger, depending on the guy. Yeah.
But, so when you're wrestling high school kids after having that experience of going with college kids, is that one of the big things that gave you confidence, just knowing that like this is just a high school kid now? I'm smoking this guy.
Yeah, but also anxiety because I'm like, if I lose the high school kid, I could you're like, then your benchmark changes, right? So you're like, I could maybe do okay in college. I can maybe place at a college tournament right now. I can't be losing to a high school kid. Yeah. But the styles are different, and it's just one of those things where you can lose to anyone at any time, within a realm. But it did. It gave me a lot of confidence because I was, getting better, and then had some benchmarks to say, if I'm doing well against this guy, I should beat these guys, type of thing.
Yeah. Senior nationals comes around. How'd the senior nationals go?
Good. That one I won, and it was it was a good tournament. But because I had that weird turn on top, right? The crab rider tilt, we want to call it. In New York, everyone knew it, right? Because that's kind of where you wrestle most of your matches. And it was like, everyone scouted it. So it got a little bit more difficult to get it, even though you could do it if you're really good at something. But it was really well scouted. But then when I went to the national tournament, it's like no one knew what the heck was going on. So that tournament was actually like a nice one for me because it kind of threw people off. So I scored a lot of points, with the tilt. So
you pinned everybody, teched them? What'd you do?
Pretty close, yeah. I think I might have majored one guy or not, but it was fairly dominant. Yeah.
Where'd you get that? Where'd that move? Like, when did that start becoming part of your repertoire?
Pretty young. I think within 7th grade. The guy I'm talking about, Andy McNerney, it was his, so that was his invention. Yeah. So
that's funny.
It's kind of a mix between riding legs and like a traditional crab ride on top where you're kind of behind the legs, and then his own twist on it. a little bit of Gene Mills. I don't know if you know Gene Mills, but he was a Syracuse stud. So
absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, he was my Yoda. He gave me all the secrets, all the moves to win.
I love it. So let's talk about when you had to decide what college you were going to. What was that experience like, and where else were you looking besides Harvard?
I was looking at a lot of places because, as a kind of blue collar kid growing up, like, I watched Competitor Supreme from Iowa back in the day. If you've seen that and you like idolized at that time, Iowa was the college of wrestling in the 90s, in the late 80s. It was like, work hard. And that was like my mantra because I didn't know any better. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I still love those guys. But so I looked at all Big Ten schools, took trips. I mean, I looked at Hofstra because I love Tom and a Long Island guy, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, recruited by most places. And then all the Ivies as well, that door, because of this guy, Andy, I was like, I didn't know like smart guys were good at wrestling. I also didn't know I was smart. So I'm like,
you changed. I think you actually might've changed wrestling. Ever since you, bro, everyone's doing good in school.
Yeah,
have you ever thought of that? Have you ever put that together where like that changed? Because I feel like when we were growing up, athletes, like wrestlers, like we focused on wrestling. It wasn't like the cool thing to be good in school too.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were like 80s kids. So we were like, tough guys and like, it's not very inclusive and like we're driving IROC-Z's basically.
Yeah.
So it shifted. I'd certainly not taking credit for the shift, but I was part of a shift of timing where there were guys before me that were amazing. It was just less, right? The top recruits weren't traditionally going to Ivy League schools. Cornell was doing pretty well. Penn did well. We had Brandon Slay and Brett Motter. These are phenomenal guys in Ivy League wrestling, right? So, but then you did see a huge move where like Princeton, Cornell's the top 2. I think they took second once or something. It's like crazy. They could win a national title. Ivies were never a threat to win. Now, all of a sudden, between Princeton and Cornell and Penn and Harvard's, we're doing better now.
Absolutely.
These are threats. So like guys were like, hey, this could be a vehicle. What I preach at Beat the Streets, the nonprofit I work with, is basically, accessibility and a vehicle to a better life through education. And, wrestlers can be smart too. We have the discipline. You don't have to be genius IQ. You just have to put the time in to learn. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited that we've seen that shift. I think Ivy League wrestling is very good for the sport and the sustainability of the sport. So
I agree. When did you make that shift? Were you focused on school since like, freshman in high school, or was that something you picked up later on?
I was just really competitive. I didn't like being embarrassed because I'm vain and I just wanted to win. So I was like, that was originally the motivation to do well in school. I didn't want to be the dumb guy in the class. And then my parents also had accountability too. It wasn't like, if you don't get all A's, you can't eat lunch or dinner, but it was kind of like, if you started getting C's or, B- is a lot and like D's or something, there was definitely a conversation to be had.
Yeah.
But again, they weren't really pushy. They were just good at instilling values through how they lived and also being present. My parents were around, and they were interested in their kids' lives. So, there wasn't this big emphasis on college education. It was not a history of any Ivy League people in our family. And it's not something they even thought about until wrestling opened that door for me. And that guy, Andy, opened that door. And then, my brother went to Harvard, my sister went to Princeton. So you see that that shift, that legacy shift, and which I love because that can happen with anyone. Once you know the system and you see the opportunity, it's life changing. So,
but there's no question at that point, wrestling was your life, though, right? Wrestling was your number one passion, right? Going into college, and typically Harvard wasn't the school that's going to create a national champion, right? At that time. How did you deal with that battle inside you, knowing that you could go to an Iowa where, more likely chance of you having the right partners and the right coaches and all that. And then now this new element of life where like, no, there's something after wrestling, and going to a school like Harvard, it's going to open up more doors for you.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it was really hard because at 17, 18 years old, you don't care about any of that stuff. Whatever's right in front of you is what you care about. And like winning a national title, going to an Olympics and winning Olympic gold is all I cared about since I was, 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I Yeah, it was a tough decision, but I felt at that point, I was like, hey, our school wasn't big on wrestling. It was a small public school. It wasn't Blair Academy or St. Anne's at the time, which were like the big wrestling schools nationally. I stayed where I was. I did what I did and I accomplished it and felt that I'm going to do it there. And it'd be nice to be the first to do it there versus the 50th to do it at Iowa. And there's nothing wrong with that. And, maybe I could have snuck in another title or something if I was there. Probably not. I think Harvard was great to me. And they gave me all the best coaches and partners. And it was just a great marriage of getting, an education that was probably just out of my reach without wrestling. And then, fulfilling, athletic goals that I wanted to fulfill. But it was a hard decision though. Now it's not a hard decision. I was like, like, of course, like, you're mature. And like, if I had kids, I'd be like, you'd be silly not to do that.
Yeah.
But at the time, even my parents weren't sure. They didn't know. They didn't know. They don't know like how much that could change, kind of your opportunities.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was tough.
Yeah. And your dad, I'm sure, was listening to all these different wrestling dads and they know your potential and then he's going to go to Harvard. I mean,
yeah, it was a risk. I mean, at the time, although I don't want to say that because the Harvard coaches, they were great.
Yeah.
But like, you just didn't know. There wasn't, like, to your point, there wasn't a huge track record. There was plenty of All-Americans. We were doing pretty well, but there wasn't like a legacy of national champions. There was one in 1938, I think, and then none. So, but it kind of feels good to be the one to kind of like to do it when you're not expected to do it. There's also a little bit less pressure, right?
Yeah.
Hey, they don't think I'm supposed to win. Well, let me prove it. Let me go prove them wrong.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nice too.
What was it like going to Harvard? Like, if you had to explain it to someone who's never been to an Ivy League school before, what was that like for you?
For me, it was extremely intimidating in the beginning because I felt the sports stuff wasn't super intimidating. I was like hardest working guy in the room, always. And I had pretty good success early on. So that was like seamless. But just I'm a kid that grew up in a small town from Long Island with not a lot of money and like 5 kids in one bathroom house. And like, we had everything. It was not like saying I had it rough, but my point is like now I'm in a room with a guy from Kenya, Austria, from China. They're speaking all different languages. They also speak English. Some of them are like trust fund legacy, the richest people in the world. Some of them go on to run Facebook. Some of them are Olympians and this and that. And you're like, what the hell is going on? I'm just like an idiot from Long Island that's trying to figure it out. And I remember being in class, like in the beginning, I didn't want to comment because I was like, I'm going to sound stupid,
Yeah. And
like, with confidence and knowledge and like, by the next few years in, you're like, you're hitting your stride. But for me, just honestly, it was intimidating for sure. The academics were intimidating, the cultural stuff, and it wasn't obvious. Like if you were there, you wouldn't notice that, but like internally, it was a little intimidating, some of the stuff, but sports helped integrate. And then socially it was fun. It's an amazing city, Boston and Cambridge. It's the most academic city. Yeah. It's probably the most academic city, in the United States, as far as colleges and institutions. There's so many colleges and institutes that are for science and research. It's a special place and it's a cool city. So I feel super fortunate and happy to have had the opportunity, but candidly, it was certainly an adjustment in the beginning.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, just like you were so passionate about wrestling and spending, every minute you had during the day to focus on ways to win and become the best version of yourself. That's probably what everyone was doing there, but more towards academia, like how to be the best business person in the world or, how to, create some type of, whatever. But, and then all of a sudden you're diving in there in the same class as these people. Like if I talk, this guy's going to think I'm an idiot. So was there a lot of catching up to do? Like just like with the way you spoke and, just to get yourself comfortable?
I tried to kick the Long Island accent at some point.
Did you really? Were you trying to get rid of the Long Island accent?
No.
Don't you tell me that.
Yeah, I kid. I did not. But it was a little overwhelming catching up. I didn't really, I took this writing class 3 times. That might have been the catching up. Some people take that class once. I took it 3 times. It wasn't because I wasn't passing, but you had a choice to took it in summer school. It's expository writing. It's like a classic, hazing type writing class. So like Henry Kissinger got a C in it. I think what they do is you come in and the first paper you write is always a C, no matter who you are. And then they slowly give you a B plus, maybe an A, because they want to show progress and they want to kind of beat you down. So like you could have been some genius that wrote an A paper at the first paper. They're just not going to give it to you. So it was kind of funny, but I there's a little bit of catching up. I probably had to do more studying and reading than the guy that came from, the fanciest private schools, in the country, Andover or somewhere like that. But then you get comfortable, you find your stride. I was really regimented on my schedule. So like, it wasn't always work, but it was always on time and it was solid. And I negotiated ahead of time. I'd hand work in early because I would come into class because they didn't love athletes at that time. They didn't dislike them, but it was like, there was no excuse. You could be cutting weight, you could be traveling, you could be, competing Thursday, Friday, Saturday in the class on Thursday. It's not an excuse absence. So I'm be like, all right, listen, this is my wrestling schedule for the year. I want to hand the papers in early or do this and that. And most of the professors, felt that, I guess they respected it. So they basically said, okay, you know what, you can hand it in late or you can hand it in this time, because I went out and it just was upfront about everything.
Gotcha.
So, it was one way to handle kind of like the grueling schedule during the season. Then out of the season, you have some more time. But.
Yeah. I mean, so in high school, I don't think it was, I would assume that high school was way easier than going to Harvard, right? In terms of academics, right? As far as the time that you have to put in. So juggling that with still having the same goals for yourself in wrestling, still trying to become a national champion, how were you able to juggle that mentally, knowing that like, all right, I'm putting all this extra time into academics because I know it's going to be good for the rest of my life, and I'm trying to catch up with all these people so I don't become embarrassed because you don't like to be embarrassed. How were you able to juggle all that? And like, did it become frustrating? Did it, get to the point where you were regretful of going there?
No, I mean, definitely there's moments of frustration, I think, with a heavy workload, especially if things don't go your way, you have a bad match, you're cutting weight, you don't do well on a test or paper. The biggest thing was just being like any wrestler knows, or any disciplined person, was just schedule, right? So like staying to the schedule, you have your morning workout, you go to class, you go to lecture, you usually get a little bit of break, and then you have practice again, and then work, and then I would go lift at night back then. So it was a full schedule, but there was more freedom and autonomy to your schedule. So in high school, you knew you had to be in, what's it, 7:30 to 2:30 or 3, and then you had your practice. There was no breaks really. You had lunch, but not, you basically just had to do this thing.
Yeah.
In college, right? Some classes you have 2 days a week or not. And like, you had more flexibility to curate the schedule so that you could get everything done. So I liked that because I felt that I could be more efficient and make sure that I was being, proactive about all that stuff and getting everything done. So I didn't find, once I got in my rhythm, I wasn't too frustrated or worried about it.
Gotcha. All right, let's fast forward. You win nationals at Harvard. You accomplish your goal. 3-time college All-American, 4-time college All-American.
3, yeah.
3-time college All-American. So accomplish things that obviously the majority of people can never imagine. Mm-hmm. You're graduating Harvard University. What's the next step for you?
I knew I wanted to train for the Olympics. So 2008 was the goal. So I decided to take a job in Boston, kind of helping, like as an internship, helping this property management company. So I did that for a little while to get a little life experience while I was training, and a volunteer coach like everyone does. Like now it's the regional training centers didn't really exist, but we kind of had that. We had a donor that brought in some great coaches and athletes for us. So I knew I'd be part of that program a bit. So I was training at Harvard. I was competing. I was traveling internationally and domestically in freestyle. I went to, at this time, I don't know if they still have it, but it was called the University World Games, not the University Worlds. It was like all athletes. It wasn't just wrestling. It was like a mini Olympics. Mm-hmm. And it actually was a competitive tournament for us. It was guys that were silver in the senior worlds, the real worlds that year, where Bill Zadek, I think, beat the guy. And then a couple bronze in the Olympics. So it was a great weight class. And that's 2005. And I won, and I kind of won with ease. So people are like, oh, maybe this guy has a shot of being our next Olympian. I was young. I was just finishing school, and things were going well. Fast forward a couple months, and then I was wakeboarding out in Long Island, and I was doing some tricks and landed, and I broke this weird bone in my foot. It's called a Liz Frank break. It's named after like one of Napoleon's generals in the army, because people would fall out of the stirrups of like horses, and they would just break their foot weird. what happens is there's a ligament tear and then it spreads apart and then it's a mess. You lose like spring off your foot and the arch.
Gotcha.
Actually, Kyle Dake had the same surgery. And when I told him like what I did and who to go to, because it was a rare injury no one had known about.
Gotcha.
So the reason I tell you this story is because it sidelined me for a long time, because it was mistreated and misdiagnosed, and no one's fault other than they just didn't get it. And they treated me with like a broken foot. Said, 8 weeks, you'll be fine. 8 weeks later, I tried to run on a treadmill. I just couldn't do anything with this foot. It just couldn't do a calf raise, couldn't jump. I was like, I don't think it's healed. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I went to get another opinion, my third opinion at this point. And they were like, no, you have this Liz Frank ligament tear and break. You have to have surgery. I was like, all right, well, who can do it? So I find this guy in Baltimore, Mercy Medical Center, who's like the best, this cool South African guy with like an entourage of people following him around. And he did like Ty Law and like Terrell Owens and their ankles. So I was like, all right, these guys got real money, real athletes. He's probably the guy.
Yeah.
So he fixes it, but like that sidelined me for like well over a year and a half. And then I started getting back into training and started competing. I did an internship on Wall Street during that time. So I was like, hey, this is really like an existential crisis. Like I can't just be an athlete forever. And like, I can't do that right now. So it was good though, because it opened my eye to like, you know, life after sports, which wasn't something I had that much of at this point in my life. And then I got back into training and had some big wins.
Were you just doing like lifting and stuff to try to stay active and keep your strength going? Is that that's what we were down to?
Swimming, lifting, rehab. I had a stim thing on my leg, so my muscle didn't completely atrophy. And then it made me get real heavy though, which sucks because I was like making 145 and I'm light now, but I was like almost 180. Wow. And, and that's normal for guys cutting weight in UFC and stuff, but it was big and bulky. So it took me a while to trim that down and get it under control again. Yeah. Came back, went to the Olympic trials, lost, but I never really got my footing, pun intended, after that. But I did have some wins after that. Like I think Freyer was our Olympian. I had a win over Jared right when I came back. So it was like realistic, but I didn't have the consistency to just win it,
Gotcha.
But
who'd you lose to?
I lost to
and this is the OA trials we're talking for the Olympics? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I lost to
So
Larkin.
you were out completely for 07? For the world trials and stuff?
Yeah, 06 and 07. I didn't get to go to either one.
Okay.
So I lost to Larkin. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, stud. You wrestled in college a lot too, right?
Yeah, I had a winning record against Eric, but he is a stud and always a nice guy. So, but that one he even said, he was like, it felt like, something was off. Like after that match, so.
He told you felt like crap. You didn't feel like the Jesse Jantzen I'm used to wrestling.
He's like, thanks for the easy win. Slapped me around. I was like, oh great. But yeah, so no, I mean, no regrets. It's always a bitter pill to swallow when, winning is what you want and be on the team. But, there's a lot of other things that went into it that were served me in life. So, that's what I'll say.
Well, I will say, like, all of Long Island was watching you. All of Long Island watched your entire career from high school to college, and everyone's watching you now. So it's awesome where you're going. So you finished. Talk to me. How hard was that to finally, now you're letting go of wrestling for the first time in your life, and now fully moving into another chapter of your life?
Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, it was pretty hard. I mean, that transition. I talked to a lot of athletes about this, and I have friends that run the Concussion Foundation, and I'll tie this together. And why I'm saying that is,
why are you looking at me when you say concussion?
You're not. You're back. You sound great.
Oh, I'm good. You're
all over it. Yeah. I mean, because people talk about PTSD from concussions in athletes, and I think some of that trauma is actually an identity issue, and they do studies about this, right? So like my identity was an athlete for such a long time, and that transition to something else, to have that same passion and wake you up every day and to chase it like there's nothing else in the world, that like soldiers have this issue, right? A lot of athletes, professional athletes that are famous have this issue because all of a sudden you got to be a normal guy. You walk into the restaurant, everyone knows who you are, and you're the world champ, you're the Super Bowl champ, and then now you're a guy working a business job, you're an analyst. It's a little bit different, and some people make that transition really well, and they adjust perfectly. A lot don't. Yeah. And I think athletes suffer from that a lot. I did. It was hard. I mean, I knew I was going to have the same passion and work ethic for something else, but you're going into a corporate job now where you are the low guy in the totem pole, and some guy who's like, a trust fund guy from Princeton's telling you to go get his fucking coffee. And you're like, guy, I could crush you. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
But you can't say that because this is the world.
You don't even have cauliflower ear, really, do you?
This one is drained a lot. It's drained a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you look like a tough guy, you know, but you're also pretty, so it's hard. They just think they could run all over you.
I wish.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it is, though, right? You get like, that's the hierarchy and the bureaucracy and everyone has to do it. And it's not offensive. It's just the way it works. I think we're getting better as not having to like haze people or make them do silly things. But like if a wrestler has a chip in his shoulder, right? I don't know if you do, but most do, right?
Yes.
It's a respect thing. It's a loyalty thing. It's a tough guy thing. And you're like, in the beginning, that's an adjustment. You're going into the real world and you're like, oh, I got to like do what this guy says. And like, he's not really being that nice about it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just that, right? But it's just something new and you have to like have that passion. So for me, it was, I'm happy, I did it. And like what I'm doing now, I wake up in the morning, I'm really passionate about it. But certainly it was an adjustment, especially since, I didn't win the Olympic gold. So you're always a little bit bitter for a while and you have to mourn that loss.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. You have to mourn it and deal with it and then decide you're moving on and find other purposes and stuff.
Did it just kind of just come over time? The realization that, all right, I'm not a wrestler anymore. That's chapter's done. You've obviously had a great career, but now has to be something. It's going to be something else. And I want to be just as passionate about this as I was about wrestling because I know I'm going to be successful. Because just like you were successful in wrestling, you could transfer right over. Was it overnight type thing, or was it just like over time, it just slowly started clicking and you adapted to it?
It wasn't overnight because I felt I could still win a little bit, So it's like one of those things, like still staying in shape. Like, I'm not going to wrestle again, or I'm not going to fight.
I still got my money on you with like a bunch of wrestlers out there. I still got my money on you. You might not even have it on yourself. I'm with Jesse.
I'm making a comeback.
Let's
but
go.
That was the point. Like, you never really let it go. Like, like I work out now, I box now, like I'm going to fight or wrestle someone, but that's good because it keeps you in shape.
But
you're not really going to do that. So it's like one of those things where it was slow. It wasn't overnight. And
Gotcha.
I think any wrestler would probably tell you the same thing.
Is there any advice that you would give somebody who's going through that time period of their life where they're trying to make a transition that is difficult?
Stay really busy. And even if the thing that you're working on isn't like your dream job, like just do it because it'll lead to the next thing. You know what I'm saying? What happens is a lot of these guys get a little complacent, like, oh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. And there's a lot of options, but like, well, I'm not that passionate about this, I'm not that passionate about that. I was like, well, dive into one thing. It's like the worst decision is no decision. A bad decision you could fix, you learn from it. But the worst decision is no decision. So just jump at it. That could lead to another opportunity. And then eventually, once you're on the path, you're going to find the path. But you got to get on the path. And I think that there's moments in my life where I probably should have just jumped at certain things. And I didn't. And I don't know if that's like a great answer, but that's how I feel. I think
I think that is a great answer. You know, just it almost you could draw a parallel between that and like sports in general. Not being afraid to fail. I think the thing that holds people back is like, I'm not that passionate about this because if I go and I decide to do something that I'm not that passionate about, I may not be as good as I was in my sport or whatever else you were doing, but just jump in. And if anything, you learn, you learn from it. And you only got to have regrets from things that you didn't do, and
it's such a good point. And it makes me think of something I went through, which was that I thought I was going to, I was one of the best in the world at one point at this thing. And I didn't even want to do certain hobbies because I was like, I can't be the best in the world at it. Well, I don't understand. It's so arbitrary. Why would someone run a marathon? Are you going to win it?
Yeah.
You're going to beat the Kenyan or not? Like, what's the deal? Yeah. So for a while, I got past that because I understood the purpose of those things, which was, it's regimented. It's an accomplishment. There was like having hobbies is really healthy. The community of it's really healthy. Participating with people. Like there's so much you get out of those things that in the beginning, when I left as an egotistical wrestler, I was like, well, that's stupid. Why would I do that? Like, you can't win it. Why would you do it? And
I struggle with that still. I like playing golf. Like, it's hard for me just to play golf, like, unless I'm going to do this 100% and try to become the best at it. And then you have to have the mindset that, no, you're not actually going to be the best at this. You got to just be another guy who shows up to the golf course and, tries to be halfway decent. It's like a hard mindset to have.
Yeah, because then you're competing against yourself. You're setting different goals, right? Like, well, for me, I'm 4 strokes better. I mean, I'm amazing, right?
Yeah.
But no, you're not. whoever's that Fowler. I don't know who's the top guy right now. I don't even know. But like,
Yeah, I don't
anyway,
know.
so
I
I
don't know either.
understand. I understand that mentality. So like, it makes a lot of sense. But I think I'm adjusting to it now.
Yeah. So tell me about where you're at now. Let's talk. You started with Nova. I'll let you tell me, like how your career has transpired over time.
Oh, great. So after '08, the financial crisis hit, and I was interviewing. I had that job at this place called Perella Weinberg Partners, and they're now a public company and are crushing it. But at that time, it was only 20 people. So I was basically kind of shadowing the founder and working in M&A banking, like building models, financial models to evaluate companies that
Okay.
might be acquired or merged, buy or sell, all that stuff. And
So to put a number on a company, like just to
yeah,
figure out how much this
yeah,
company's worth so it could
yeah.
get bought. Okay.
In basic terms.
Okay.
And then '08 happened, I lose, and then their financial crisis hits. And I'm like, oh, all right, good. At least I can go get my job on Wall Street and like interview and stuff. And I was like interviewing at Morgan Stanley and Goldman, all these places. And they're like, dude, like if you want to be a janitor here, maybe we can give you a job. And I was like, I'm not above any work. Does that lead to another job? Like, I'll do it. So it was basically not
Did they not see
exactly.
you from Harvard? Does that not even matter at that point?
Well, it does, but like, they're laying off thousands of people, right? Like we thought the world was ending in '08.
That's
Like, I mean,
true.
it
Yeah.
was like, the Great Depression was the last time we saw anything like this. And it snapped back surprisingly quick, but at the time it was tough. So I got an opportunity to work for a family office, which was basically like hedge fund strategy. They invested in assets and stocks and all sorts of things. But he was a guy I knew through the wrestling community. He did really well. In the hedge fund world, and he had a manufacturing business that manufactured steel parts for like farming equipment and mine sweeps for the government. So he's like, hey, listen, if you don't get the job at Morgan Stanley, why don't you come work for me? I want to build out this strategy and we'll kind of operate kind of like a hedge fund. And you can manage a stock trading portfolio, long, short equity. And then you could be an analyst for the manufacturing company and kind of learn more about that business. So I went out to Boulder, Colorado, of all places in '08, which was kind of the opposite of what I thought I'd be doing because, the financial center of the world is New York. That's where my people are. It's where my family is.
Is
So I
that
went
where
out.
he was manufacturing like the metal
No,
piece?
no, the
Okay.
company was out in Canada in Hamilton. I guess that's Ontario.
And are we
Um,
talking about Mike Novogratz right now?
no, I
Okay.
never actually worked for Mike. Me and Mike were on the board of Eat the Streets together, and then we share some investment deals together. And I invested in his company, but I never
Okay.
worked for his company.
Oh, get out of here. I did not
Yeah,
know that. I swore
yeah,
you worked for him for
yeah.
years.
No, I would say close friend and co-invest on certain things, and like just a great guy. But
Yeah.
I've never hired by his company. So
Gotcha.
anyway, did that for a number of years, came back, worked with my brother-in-law, who was a Harvard wrestler as well. And we ran, a fund that invested in, you know, bonds. So he was a bond trader, not to get too granular, but like the commercial mortgage-backed securities, which was a good strategy after '09 and '08. I ran a portfolio of long short equity of stocks. And then we had, a global macro currency strategy and a few other things.
Now, at this point, are you extremely passionate about this? Were you in this and trying to be the best at it?
Yeah. I mean, this is what I was doing full time, pretty much I would stay in shape a little bit, but like, my full days and long days were just, getting up in the morning, doing research for hours, talking to the bank desks that would say, hey, this is what we're seeing, managing my positions in portfolio, sometimes even Asian markets, which require like, middle of the night checking positions. So yeah, it was,
Your
almost.
circadian rhythm wasn't important to you anymore?
Yeah, I wish you didn't really have a choice when the money's hemorrhaging. You gotta
Yeah.
make the call.
Gotcha.
So, but it's interesting and amazing because everything's tied to it, right? You understand the markets, you can always invest, you can find ways to make money, and you have investors as well that you have to be accountable for, and it's exciting and fast paced, but also a skill that's very useful. And understanding global economies and politics is a useful skill no matter what. So there for, I guess, 7 or 8 years. But what happened is my brother-in-law got stage 4 lymphoma, which a young guy at that point, he was only in his late 30s and had like almost no symptoms.
Wow.
But, fast forward, he got through it and beat it. And it's a really good story.
Wow.
But we started to kind of like, reevaluate things and unwind some things in the fund. And he, was spending a lot more time with his family. And I was classmates with Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss, who were the Facebook twins.
Yes.
And they were deep into Bitcoin at that point. And I was like, maybe, at that point, I was a little egotistical. Like, this is silly. This is funny money. This is for Silk Road drugs.
What year was this? Sorry,
This would be 2015. I was aware. 2015, I was aware of it. 14, but I didn't really invest till 2016.
Gotcha. And
not
how'd you
super.
become close with the Winklevoss, right? How'd you get close to them?
Friends, I mean, we were acquaintances or knew each other in college. We weren't really super close because they were rowing and doing things, and I was kind of head down, meathead wrestler. So, but in college, I mean, in New York City, we connected again. We had a bunch of common friends, and I was like, they're working on interesting things. And then we started to open a dialogue a bit. And I think I was one of their first, maybe it was 2015, because they lost Gemini, this crypto exchange, I think in 2015 or 16. And I was one of their first accounts for sure, because I remember opening it up. Anyway, we were changing what we were doing at the family office at Clearview. Joel, my brother-in-law, was getting over lymphoma. And I was like, all right, I think I'm going to invest more in the crypto space and start to manage, money in that space as well as the stock market.
So I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but I just want to get this all straight. So you're not taking your own personal money. You're taking the money that we have in this hedge fund almost, right? Am I right with saying that?
When I left, it was personal money because I was like, hey, I'm seeing opportunity. And I was leaving the family office that was with my brother-in-law. And so I was investing. I started a holding company. I started a holding company, a couple LLCs, and I basically launched a fund to invest my family office or my money.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then that was kind of the strategy, being Bitcoin, Ethereum, some of these other tokens as the ICO boom, the initial coin offering boom happened in 2017. And then I got kind of deep entrenched in that community, in that world, because there was like these meetups every week and the energy in the community was just growing and it was so strong. And because of some of my relationships, I was like, kind of getting access to see what was going on and the latest things in the technology. Still managing public markets, stock market stuff, but a lot of what I've been doing.
I'm sorry, you had other people's money that you were now trading inside the stock market, but now you're also taking their money and using it in Bitcoin.
No, when I left, it was my own family office, so it was just mine for the time being. I eventually had a little bit of family and friends money that wanted to invest in crypto, so I helped a little bit, but gotcha. It was my fund, my family.
So you're doing your own thing.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And in that world at that time, it wasn't horrible because the returns were kind of crazy if you could handle the volatility, because the volatility is, insane as far as the swings. I mean, we're seeing it's 27 now, down 27% this month. Yeah. But still in almost $50,000, it's still a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I was at. I was doing, my brother's an actor in LA, so we did, executive produced a couple films. We do. Some stunt stuff for the background because of the wrestling. Yeah. We have 3 development projects in the works. So we're working on some scripts and some literary options and life rights to make movies.
Really? So you guys like that? Is that more your brother's thing, or is that you're into that just as much?
I enjoy it too. I think I've invested in some of the stuff. I've helped on sets and TV and film and different, kind of different roles, but the real thing I want is to create something and see if we can create something interesting. So we have 3 projects that we're trying to get over the goal line that would be, either written by or produced by us. And, these things are tough, especially in the independent film world. It's it's a bit of a crapshoot as far as getting projects made sometimes. Could be the best project in the world, but bad timing. Or you might have money locked up and then the money leaves type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the nonprofit stuff, which takes up a lot of time, which is the Beat the Streets, and was the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia that I was on the board of as well.
Got it. So pretty much your days though, your main thing for money right now is still the stock market, or are you all in crypto now?
Both. So I still trade equities, long short equity options, and then crypto, which is crazy because it's a 24-hour market, and there's a lot going on.
And you're day trading like Bitcoin and Ethereum still?
I mean, depending on opportunity, I might buy or sell it, but generally that stuff I buy and hold Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's more of a longer term play. I think if everyone I talk to, and I would tell you, hopefully you own some, is have 1 to 5% of your net worth in it.
Yeah.
And, we'll see, when you have a kid, it goes in their trust at some point, and then they got a bunch of money to go to college. So I think there's other coins that are maybe interesting now with the NFT boom and some of the protocols being built, but you want to have some exposure to the best of breed Bitcoin, Ethereum type things.
Yeah, I put to make a long story short, I made a big mistake. So
That's all right.
2017, I bought, I think it was 2017. Yeah, early 2017. I bought Bitcoin and I bought Ethereum, small amount of Ethereum, more Bitcoin. And it ended up going from, I think I bought it like $9,000. So whenever Bitcoin was $9,000.
Yeah.
And it dropped down to, it actually went from 9,000 to like 20 something thousand. Then it dropped down to like 3 or 4,000.
Yeah.
I stayed strong. And then I didn't touch that. I haven't touched it until this year, until like 5 months ago. I had one of my buddies hit me up and was like, yo, I'm taking, like, and he does really well for himself, but he's a very conservative dude.
Yeah.
And he was like, I have this inside info on this coin called the Shiba Inu coin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I know you've heard of at this point. But at the time, this was in March. So he tells me about it, and he's like, one of my buddies just made like, his cousin made like 2 million. The guy who's kind of like knows the developers and has all the information on it, he made $25 million, and it was only going to keep going up. It was eventually going to be on Coinbase, and there's going to be all these new swapping technology that's going to come out, so it could be easily swapped. And I'm like, all right. So I basically sold everything, put it into Shiba Inu, and the Shiba Inu went from, let's say I had $100,000 in it. $100,000 hit like 14,000, and it stayed there for a few months. And next thing I know, my boy, one of the Vaynerchuks hit me up because I'm friends with, I'm in the Vayner Sports. AJ Vaynerchuk hits me up, and we start talking about NFTs. And I'm like, you know what, this Shiba, I'm already screwed on it. I'm gonna just buy some NFTs now. So then I basically sold my Shiba, bought the NFTs, and then all of a sudden Shiba started skyrocketing. And I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Yeah, I just got so unlucky. My whole point of bringing it up is that I should have just stayed with my Bitcoin, stayed with my Ethereum, because at the end of the day, I would have been better off. And I sold it around 55,000, so I still would be down a little bit, right? I sold Bitcoin at like 55,000.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I sold it at a good price, but still crap the bed. I got some good NFTs. But the NFTs is a buy and hold thing. I'm not just selling them, for, a couple $1,000s. So
yeah, I mean, you got an education, maybe a little expensive, but it sounds like you're flat at least, or you got some money in the NFTs now. It's one of those things where definitely you learned a lot and you got exposure. The best, and hindsight's a tough game to play, whether you're a trader or you're an investor or you're into Bitcoin. Like, you can never play hindsight because you'll kill yourself, you torture yourself. And every trader knows, like a wrestler, right? Short memory, 0-0 second period. You get thrown to your back, you get off, second period 0-0. Otherwise, the mountain's just too high. You don't think you could come back. And like investing, you have to have that same mentality, which is a good parallel for our sport too. Like, you got to just 0-0 start again. And if you think about the people that lost hard drives with hundreds of millions of dollars on it, the people that sold when they shouldn't have sold, like, you're in great company. Everyone does that. And the only people that really, really did extraordinarily well were either so rich to begin with, or so, I don't know if the word's ignorant, or just lost their hard drives and found them, and lucky, right? Because like no one would not take profit at 1,000% return on these things, right? Yeah. So like most people took profit, bought a little more on the way, took profit, and then they got a lot of money, and then they just spread their bets like a portfolio and just put it in a bunch of things. Some of them have done really well too, but it's a frustrating game because the volatility is crazy, and then like it's moving so fast. 1 week or 1 month in crypto land's like 10 years. The opportunities coming left and right. The metaverse, the NFTs, and Dogecoin's crazy today, up 15% because Elon said that he might take some types of Tesla payments through Dogecoin. And that's like just silly. You never know when Elon, who like wants to play God, decides something silly. Like, that's generally to me a little bit silly. It's a meme coin that has great community, but not a real huge purpose. It's like a Reddit army and Elon kind of like just having fun. And then all of a sudden you have these crazy swings. So that's the danger of this market, that you can have that unexpected volatility over the silliness. But the beauty is it's very democratic. It's got a lot of people have a lot more access than they did to investing. And it could solve some really big problems and could shake up some things globally within corrupt governments and central banks and things like that. So, I'm a believer. Obviously, I would still have exposure to Ethereum and Bitcoin, even at these prices. Kind of forget about it. I think having NFT exposure, it's tough if they're pieces of art, unless you have art experts. Like, you can have some punks and different things, but like that might be bubbly. Like a pixelated picture of a guy might go up higher for a while, but we may find out that the utility of that at a collectible value that is overdone. The space is not overdone. These NFTs will have value beyond digital pixelated art, beyond all sorts of silliness. It'll have, maybe it's biometrics, maybe it's your medical records are going to be an NFT or different things. And the metaverse is real. People are spending a lot of money and time in these like virtual reality places, these lands, Sandbox, Decentraland. I don't know how much your kids do in gaming right now, but I'm sure whether it's Roblox or different things, they're in this world or they're interested in it.
Yeah, like even Fortnite, the amount of money, I think the game is free, but it's all through avatars and different clothes that they could buy, and it's kind of similar to. It's like a status thing. It's going to be, I think it's kind of similar to what NFTs are going to mean in the metaverse. It's like, oh my gosh, I just walked in this guy's, fake house in the metaverse and he has, one of those punks on his wall. He's the man. I want to hang out at his house more. And it makes these people feel good that have it. And it has a value on it. Besides, it doesn't get stuck in that one, in the game. Like, my son buys that skin that is now stuck in the game. You can't take that out. But in the metaverse, you're able to sell that item and then get Bitcoin or whatever, crypto you're able to get and pull it out.
Yeah, it's really well said. I completely agree. And that is the utility of it, is owning real estate in that world. People are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, some people. And like you're seeing yachts and homes and land, and Nike has a whole place now.
I just seen that's incredible. When did that, was there like an IPO on that thing? Or
something? Well, they would. Oh, like a IC. Well, they didn't sell tokens for it. They just have like the artworks, virtual space. Yeah, they have like a virtual little space of real estate in the world. There's like a Nike metaverse thing now.
But also the NFTs, right? It's like little gifts of the is that I saw the floor prices already like 10 to 10.
They would have minted it. Yeah. I forget when that mint would have happened. Excuse me. But yeah, it's wild. Like the space isn't going anywhere. The asset prices I think are bubbly. I'm a little nervous. Maybe invest in the picks and shovels. I'd buy tokens like Sandbox, Mana, maybe Engine token. And because you can get exposure to that world through those things without taking a $6 million risk on a punk or something like crazy. There might be new ones that are trading at $50. I bought some baseball cards from Candy Digital, which is run by Mike Nova's, a team of people, but Matty Nova, the youngest Novo, is like senior there. So I bought a bunch of the baseball cards. A lot of UFC folks are doing things now. Fighters are doing stuff.
Yeah.
I think Dapper Labs partnered with UFC to do NFTs. Some of the sports collectible stuff is interesting as well. But everything collectible is like huge. It seems like a big bubble right now. I don't know how much higher we could go. I think we can go higher for a little while. But I don't know if a punk's going to be worth $6 million in 5 years.
Yeah, it's going to be saturated with more, other things that people want to spend their money on, I'm sure.
I think so.
More people are going to be buying real estate at that point. If people are going to have pets, then you need franchises for for pet stores. Like, I don't think it's really going to end. What was I going to ask you? I was thinking about this. I think you're a good guy to ask about this. So, iconic UFC photos, but in an NFT form. Our image and likeness is owned by the UFC. So UFC fighters can't take a Getty image and then profit off of it.
Right.
But what if you have an artist, me versus Anderson Silva, me knocking him out? That's a moment that's never going away, right? So moments like Conor McGregor being choked out by Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
An illustration of that from an artist, his own creation based off of that photo, but different because it's an artist making it. Would you be able to, and then I would go to Nate Diaz and get him on board. He gets a percentage of the NFT. We put it on the market. Would you be able? Do you think legally you're allowed to do that?
Yeah, I do.
Like copyright imaging issues.
I think you can. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but I have had a lot of people ask, and they're recreating moments. Like Gable Stevenson could recreate maybe his backflip or something. But he can't for the Olympics because NBC owns that, right? And ESPN owns that for college, right? So he can't, but maybe he can just do it and have a production company set it up and do it in a cool way and recreate it and then try to sell it due to now he owns that likeness. He owns that. Yeah. So you can do those things. Yeah. It's just one of those things where are you buying that collectible or the moment? And the moment is there a lot more value in a moment? Probably, but maybe not. Maybe there's value in both. Maybe I want your painting or digital 3D imaging of you versus Anderson Silva that's like created by a computer and you own it and he owns it. And maybe that is worth something versus the live one that did happen, the actual footage, like NBA Top Shot was doing.
Yeah.
Certainly seems like inherently like the real value. Like, oh, I own that moment. I own a home run in the World Series or something.
Yeah.
Like those are the moments that but it doesn't mean what you're saying isn't worth it. That might be worth to the right person and millions of dollars. Yeah.
You're making a good point, because at the end of the day, UFC at some point, Getty Images, whoever really owns the rights to that images, or they probably partner on it, could come out with the NFT collection of every single one of those moments. So there goes my moment.
They're doing it. I don't know if there goes your moment, but they're definitely doing it, and they're going to cash in on all that.
Yeah, and we don't get a percentage of that.
I know. Well, that's a problem.
That's me. Oh my God, my that's selling for $7 billion, and I just get to look at it. I'm just kidding with that number, but
no, but it's brutal. I mean, like that's why not having it. I mean, I'm not going to get into a union argument because I think it's a pretty good deal, but that's part of the problem.
All right, cut this out, Troy. Cut it out.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Let's get out of here. Chris will never fight in the UFC again. Now, I don't really have a dog in that fight or an opinion. I'm just saying that's that's what you weigh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you weigh. So
exactly. Wow. So what do you and I'm going back to original thing that you were saying, where when you do get hit hard, not being afraid to reset, don't feel like you lost out. Like, and I was thinking in terms of Bitcoin and Ethereum, start throwing money back in there. Like, a little at a time. Doesn't mean you have to get it all back right away. But that's something that I feel like over time is going to be successful. And I started doing that. Even on Coinbase, they make it so easy where you could, let's say you put $500 in, you could do it every week. On that same day, it's going to keep taking money out of your bank account. Do you think that's a smart way of doing it, just slowly putting money back in? Or do you think watching the price is really important as well? Like, if it hits 55 today, then I probably shouldn't buy it. I should wait till it goes back down to 50.
Yeah, I mean, you could do those things where you have buy orders and sell orders in there. Like, you don't want to sell, that's fine. You're a long only guy. Then you'd have buy orders where every $5,000 it sells off, you think you want to buy. It's just risky because sometimes there's these like catastrophic events, and then you might be buying in the face of a major sell-off because let's say the regulators shut this thing down. I put that at a very, very, very low % chance. But if you have the time to keep a little eye on it, and I send you a text, hey, it might be a good time to nibble here, probably better to do it that way. But you can if you're such a long-term holder, you can just keep buying. But there is a little bit, it's always better to get it cheaper. If you can.
Can you explain to me why, like Bitcoin's been out, I think it's not the oldest crypto, is it? Is it?
It's original.
The original. So it's the original crypto, and obviously technology constantly is growing, and they're coming out with some great technologies in crypto. And why do I explain to me why Bitcoin is going to stick around and stand the test of time when better technologies, more efficient technologies are going to be coming out, and it probably already have.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I toil with it a bit. I will say this. Bitcoin has a really well-defined lane, and a lot of these others don't right now. Their well-defined lane is digital gold, store value only. It used to be potentially a payment system and other things. I think it's the original. It's got the most institutional adoption. It's got the biggest community, and it has a technology that is useful, for storing value, we'll say. And I think that's it. Digital gold, you think of it that way, and that's why it's going to be around for a while. To your point, if quantum computing gets adopted or more technology comes out, it could disrupt things. But right now, all the other stuff solves all sorts of other problems, and it's not as simple. Ethereum storyline is a million things. They're a big part of this NFT boom. They're also a big part of smart contracts and how we do digital signatures and all sorts of things, and like digital transfer of ownership of different things. Bitcoin, its simplicity in a way is its strength, and its first mover advantage is a big one. It was way ahead of everything else.
Yeah.
So the community is certainly still strongest.
But what's the percentage of people that actually own Bitcoin? And like, as far as the amount of Bitcoin that there is, isn't it like a very small group of people that own the majority of Bitcoin?
Yeah. I mean, if there's, going to be 21 million ever mined, it obviously gets passed around a lot now. It's a trading, it's almost like a commodity as far as how assets being traded. Yeah. It's not as democratic globally. There are a lot of different people that have pieces of it now, and it's growing, but you're right. It's just a lot of people that are, running funds now that have a lot of it, or a lot of holders that are just very wealthy. So,
and like you see with the altcoins, it's easy to see with like the rug pulls. But it could happen on a big scale like Bitcoin as well, right? And I'm sure it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
Do you think there's like a group of people that are like, hey, all right, let's sell off because it's going to get a reaction like this, and then we buy back in lower? I mean, how do you?
Oh, you mean like an active targeted manipulation?
Yeah. Is that even illegal? I mean, it seems easy. Like you could see on Twitter, Elon Musk says something, boom, manipulates the market. Now you could do this. I like it with a group of celebrities. Oh, let's talk about the Shiba Inu coin. Okay, up it hits this number. Let's get out.
Yeah, I mean, in the public market, sometimes there's a market manipulation issue, they could say, but this is not, right? Then a lot of these people aren't speaking on behalf of investors. It's not like insider trading. And yes, this community are the Reddit army. They are the Twitter army. They are these decentralized, gaming type people or just rich people with funds. Yeah. So they do use that technique to manipulate. Elon, whether he's guilty of anything or not, he's definitely manipulating the market. There's no question. Yeah. And if it's exactly to his benefit or not, or just for a laugh, I don't know. But yeah, that's part of still a little bit of the risk to the price swings. You're seeing Bitcoin handle it a little bit better because there's so many institutions in it now. The Harvard Endowment owns Bitcoin, so it's getting a bit of a seal of approval from regulators. You're seeing ETFs launch and like pension funds are involved. So that one should be more stable and harder, to be catastrophically manipulated. But yeah, a lot of these other coins, it's a bit of the Wild West.
So last question. I have a few people in my life they're getting into mining. They're getting video cards in their house and they're starting to mine. It's like, I don't know, whatever, like $50 extra a month. But the more video cards they get, the more they get a month. And if you let's say you have a warehouse and you have tons of these mining machines in here, then it would make sense that you would constantly be making money. But it's weird to me that not everybody would be doing that. It sounds almost too good to be true. Is there any, other than paying electric, is there anything that you see as a reason why not everybody's just jumping into mining? If we think crypto is going to be the future, why is that not something everybody with money is starting to do?
It's hard nowadays with the to operate small rigs and make money off of it. The energy costs are high, especially if they're doing it at their home. Solving the equations are much harder. The funnel gets tighter. We're getting close to mining it all. It's going to take a long time now, but it gets much tighter. And there's a halving where they cut the reward for the miners in half every 4 years. In 2024, it gets cut again. So generally, the people that make money is these huge institutional rigs and data centers with really, really low energy cost. And they also borrow and they give back energy to the power grid of like cities and metropolises and areas. I am not an expert on all the mining. I have some people I can talk to, but I think it's probably a losing proposition to be operating any mining operation from a home by yourself. Gotcha. I think that's tough. I don't think you get much out. You're going to get many coins, and I don't know. I mean, it also kind of depends on the price of Bitcoin where it's at. Probably takes a really long time to get any reward with one single operation. What they do now is there's mining pools where you could pay to be part of a pool. Yeah, and a lot of people that operate smaller mining operations will partner where you share. There's a revenue share of it, but at least you can use each other's resources so you have more rigs operating. Gotcha. It's also hard to source. Well, I guess it's not as hard as it used to be. Now I still think you can get the hardware now, like Bitmain.
I think video cards are still hard to get. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, some of the rigs, the ant miners, and like these things from Bitmain. Bitmain's the biggest company probably in the space. But yeah, I don't know. They're probably smarter than I am, especially they're probably engineers and like brilliant minds. If they think they can do it, they're not going to deter them. But I would say, yeah, and unless you're a big player in that space, it's probably not an easy way to do well.
Gotcha. All right. And one of the other things, because I heard, I was, going back and forth with a few people on this, and one of the things I also learned is that a lot of the big places and institutions that are doing this are overseas because electric is cheaper there. Did you hear? Yeah.
So what happened was, and now part of the recent sell-off in the space was because China banned mining. That was the biggest place in the world. China did all the mining.
China banned mining?
Yeah, crypto mining.
I guess I missed that.
So what that did was it sent a lot of mining operations to the U.S. So there's upstate by Niagara Falls where they use hydropower. There's they're all trying to do it more eco-friendly ways and also save money, right? Because it's like they could subsidize energy costs.
Gotcha.
So Texas has two really big. I think Riot is one company down there in Texas that's a big one, and there's a few others around. So there's more in the U.S. than there used to be for sure. But there's like Kazakhstan, there's people talking about the Middle East and different places. So it's all over, but the China ban shifted up kind of the location of where people are mining.
Jeez. And they just did that to stay more green because it was using too much energy?
No, I don't think China gives a shit about
Yeah,
that.
so what are they doing?
I just think that they like to have control of everything and the control of the people, right? Like they don't let internet, like Facebook's not there. And it just depends. They were, depending on the policy and how it benefits them, they'll either allow it or won't. Some, I forget the latest reason why they banned all the mining operations there. It might have been just government oversight and control.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they don't like people getting rich unless they want them to get rich.
And then they go missing if they don't like them.
Right. Jack Ma. I don't even know where Jack Ma is these days. He went missing. He's back, I think.
Oh, he's back.
I think he's back.
Yeah, they have like a robot of him. Looks like him. He's not really there.
Amazing.
Hey, man, I really appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Let's stay in touch, man. I would love for you to help me out with some Bitcoin and Ethereum
I'd
stuff.
love to.
Like, just help educate me. And if you at any of those good days that you're talking about, let me know. Because I'm not. Are you in front of your computer all day long with this stuff?
Yeah, phone or computer, or you can do a lot everywhere. Your phone, and then once you're in, you can't stop looking at it. Unfortunately,
what apps are you in that you're seeing where everything's at constantly?
I basically just use my accounts, honestly. I mean, I have apps like CoinMarketCap and CoinCap and a few of these other things. There's a Blockfolio. I can send ones that maybe are easy for you to kind of consolidate everything. Mm-hmm. But like I have my Gemini and Coinbase, and then I have a few other exchanges. There's a bunch out there. So I'm like all over the place. But so I kind of just log into my accounts and monitor because I'm trading.
Gotcha.
But there are aggregators or portfolios that make it maybe a little easier to monitor.
Yeah. And I know I said it was going to be the last question, but like gas fees and stuff, how do you manage that?
I mean, you got to pay for it. I don't know. I mean, as far as like how do you calculate?
Are you constantly like doing calculations, making sure like if it's worth selling or not, if you're like day trading stuff? Adding in the gas prices.
I'm not a high volume trader of Ethereum in any way. The only time I'm doing that is if I'm like using Sushi Swap or one of those to buy
swap stuff.
Yeah, to buy like other tokens and or like some NFT stuff. And it's a consideration. But if I want it, like you're willing to pay. If you need it, you want it at the time, you're willing to pay the premium because you think the opportunity is good.
Yeah.
But I'm not trading those at super high volume. So.
Gotcha. All right, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Can I put a shameless plug to Beat the Streets? We're doing a campaign.
100%. Anything that you want to plug where people can find you, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so Beat the Streets, you know it well, but it's a national organization with 8,500 young men and women, and we're doing a Gear Up campaign to get 3,000 kids wrestling gear and shirts. We're looking to get to 150,000. We're at 80,000 right now. You could go to beatthestreetsnational.org, and we have a little campaign. So if anyone's interested, this organization is kind of what opened my opportunity, which is life skills, wrestling, development skills that lead to a college education that give you, freedom to, have a great life. So
just sit and trade crypto all day. It's a pretty good life.
Hopefully some of our kids are doing it. Hopefully.
Yeah. I love it. Anything else, bro? Where can people find you on Instagram, Twitter?
Yeah, my Instagram's Jesse Jantzen, and then Twitter is Jesse Jantzen 1. I think I lost my original name. I think someone stole it.
Uh-oh.
That's about it. Thank you so much. I'm happy you're healing well, and I look forward to seeing you kicking ass again.